By the way, just so that we maintain the beauty and civility of our gathering, I am finding out more and more that there are lots of people who are live streaming this at a later date, are streaming okay. So I say hello to all of them, and it's good to be with you, even though I don't know who everybody is. So we have this great population out there, and it's very exciting. Now, in the old days, when I was rabbi of a congregation, I was responsible for all kinds of decisions, like when things occur. However, now that I'm part of this mega structure, I follow instructions. I got a call last week, beginning of this week, from Rabbi Nanis, who said that our class, I'm not even going to give the old time, our current events class will meet on Wednesdays every other week, noon to 1 p.m., beginning January 19th and February 2nd. I know that some people have already found out about it because Effie called me immediately to complain, which is fairly standard. I had nothing to do with the change of date. I explained this to Effie. I didn't do it. I didn't move it from Tuesday to Wednesday. It was moved. I was in the passive voice, and it's now Wednesday. Every other Wednesday. January 19th is our first date, February 2nd, the next. And I apologize. I mean, that's really all I can do. I apologize. I had given you information that didn't hold up, and I know that there are some people who could do a Tuesday and can't do a Wednesday. Okay, I'm going to have to leave it like that. That's the way it is. I will just make the course that much more interesting. Thank you, Bob. Smile. That was nice. It is good to see all of you. Good Shabbos.
Almost all of you.
Brad, we really missed you last week. An issue came up which was absolutely your issue to talk about, and we missed you. How are you feeling?
Good. We were away.
Yeah, well, usually people send me excuse slips, but you know, that's okay. I hope that no one, Brad, in your Denver incarnation had any trouble with the fire or the snow.
Well, they did, but fortunately, it was within a mile of their home. But fortunately, they were with us, and so they didn't have to evacuate. And their house was safe in the end. So it's been a rough ride for them. They had no heat for a while, no water, but all is well. So, but a number of people in our congregation there, in the Boulder congregation, because you know we belong to a Reform congregation there, a number of them have lost their homes.
Wow.
Including my boss, my daughter's boss, who worked, you know, he was her boss at the synagogue.
Okay, obviously we're all sorry for that. I'm sure many people have responded to whatever is needed to give help to people. It's been, I remember that the year Princess Diana died, the Queen spoke of, what did you call it?
Annus horribilis.
Annus horribilis, correct. It was a horrible year. And we're just hoping that, I don't know, things can start to get better. I am not doing COVID announcements. except to say that anyone who's planning to be with any other people outside of your house over the next 2 weeks is probably making a serious mistake. And that's my point of view, and I know that others will disagree, but it is my point of view. Calendar. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, January 19th, we start. January 17th is Tu B'Shvat. And we'll get to Cindy in a minute. And I have no other forthcoming dates. Cindy, what does Sisterhood have?
In lieu of celebrating fruit trees by having a Seder, we're celebrating family trees by doing a Zoom on ethical wills to pass down to your family tree. It was in the bulletin and emails went out. We have almost 60 people signed up. Men are welcome to attend. It's January 20th at 5 p.m. Everyone welcome. Join us. We have a wonderful speaker. And Rabbi Leader has also written a book on ethical wills, which will be out in June. So hopefully he'll do a follow-up for the congregation. So you'll get 2 points of views on how to leave your values and a little story about yourself for your family.
I have a secret.
Just me?
Just for you, Cindy. It's like between the two of us.
Okay.
There is a section in Rabbi Leader's book directly taken from my work.
Wow.
But the publisher made clear, I'm there anonymously. Thus, you will never know where my footprints are, but they're there. And that's kind of weird. Okay. So that's good. And by the way, I love making the connection to family tree for Tu B'Shvat. I just think that that's meaningful. That's really good. So thank you for that, Jim Brooks. And anything happening on the cinema front?
Yes.
And I don't need the senator from Arizona.
I hope not. There's nothing happening upstairs with her. Our next film will be on the 15th of January, Saturday, and the next one after that will be on the 29th. And on the 15th, we're going to see a really terrific film called The Lives of Others. It's not a new film. It's from Germany, and it's about a very cold-hearted, dispassionate Stasi officer of East Germany when it was under the control of Russia before the wall came down. And he is assigned to supervise a very progressive cadre of actors, performers, and one playwright in particular for suspicious activity. And it moves to the point where they start listening in to microphones they placed in his apartment from the attic upstairs and recording conversations. It's typical East German spying on their own people. And the cold-hearted supervisor of the Stasi gets very personally involved in the lives of these progressives, especially the leader of the group, the most well-known playwright. And he sort of has a change of heart. And the transition is remarkable from unfeeling, dispassionate servant of the state to independent thinker who risks his own safety for the safety of others. He does the right thing because it needs to be done, and he pays dearly for it. So it's a fascinating, well-done, taut thriller. This is not a boring, talky film. It's all about, it's cat and mouse game between the East German state, the Stasi officer's first life, the Stasi officer's warmer second life, and the people who are being pursued. Really taut drama, and there'll be lots to discuss about it. It resonates with us today. That's called The Lives of Others. I believe it's on Amazon Prime. And you'll get an email from me this week about it.
Super. Thank you very much. What does this say here?
Is it in German or English?
It's in German with subtitles.
This book is called, this movie is entitled what?
The Lives of Others, and Tamara reminds me that it won the Oscar for Best Foreign Film some time ago.
Okay, super. Okay, that actually sounds interesting. That's really good. Okay, checking in. It's so much fun to be together, but checking in, anything new happening in your lives, hopefully positive challenges, anything else happening out there?
I have a word of caution for people. Two of my adult children were vaccinated and boosted, and one had COVID February of last year. The other had COVID February of the year, summer of the year before. And these two young people got COVID again. And one knew where she got it, the other didn't know where he got it. But it just illustrates how virulent the Omicron variant is. And I thought we were immune from it. But upon hearing that and stories, anecdotal stories from my circle of friends, it's really out there. And even though you're boosted and the results will be less disastrous, you can still be a spreader. So I think it's time. I know it's time for our family to pull back from our outside activities.
Yeah, just being with other people.
If I could add to that, Jim, our daughter also got it so badly that she went to the ER. She's going to be fine. She didn't have to say, they discharged her, but she felt really badly. And all of the hospital staff said to her, the case you have is nothing because you're fully vaccinated and boosted. You are in so much better shape than the people who haven't been vaccinated. So people really should, if you know people aren't vaccinated, they really need to go out there and get vaccinated.
Okay, I have a problem here. I got a note from Ray that he can't get on. I don't know why that is. I don't know what to do with that. I just said to him, we're definitely on. The connection, the Zoom link is the same, right? No change?
Maybe
No
Hannah can
change,
help.
it's the same Zoom link.
Oh, okay. Forgive me. I'm just going to just
Who is it that can't get on?
Ray.
Ray
Cazarin.
Aresti. Ray
You know
Does
Aresti.
what?
anybody
Tell
have
him to
his-
turn off his
email?
computer and
And
then
can you
turn it
put
on
his email
again.
in the chat?
I will put it in.
Okay, thank you.
Roy Cazarin.
I think it's Ray.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
Roy.
we're gonna go ahead now. And yeah, instead of speaking about what's going on with COVID, we'll talk about plagues. That makes sense, right? We are in the Sedra Bo. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 10, verse 21 and following. In the New Plout 407, in the Women of Reform Judaism 406. I hope that's correct. It seems so close. Okay, now I want to talk about, just because it's coming up, darkness. And I know that Rabbi Nanas, yesterday, whatever, spoke about elements of darkness. And I wanted to share with you a couple of midrashim that the rabbis used to describe what went on with the plague of darkness. This is a translation of Midrash. During the 3 days of darkness, the cover of thick cloud made it dark for the Egyptians, but gave light to the Israelites, so that Israelites were able to enter the houses of the Egyptians and see all that they had. Subsequently, when God said, "Tell the people that each man shall borrow of his neighbor," Israelites would enter the houses of Egyptians and say to the neighbor, "Lend me the vessel you have." If the Egyptian replied, I don't have such a vessel, the Israelite would say, I know you have it. I saw it. It's in such and such a place. The Egyptian would then say to himself, if in saying they merely wish to borrow, the Israelites are lying. Well, they could have stolen those vessels during the days of darkness. We wouldn't have known, so I'll loan it to him because they're obviously not going to steal it. That turned out to be very poor logic. The next midrash, it says in the text, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. Scripture does not say their dwellings in the land of Goshen, but it said only in their dwellings, which means that wherever a Jew entered, light entered with him and illuminated for him what was in casks, chests, and hidden depositories. So the rabbis here are rolling out a big story that the darkness was not only to inconvenience and distress the Egyptians, but the darkness was also a way to prepare the plundering of Egypt by the Israelites as they left Egypt. Then, this last one, this is different. Why did the Holy One, a midrash ask, bring darkness upon the Egyptians? Here's the answer the rabbis gave. Because there were transgressors in Israel. In English, there were Jewish no-goodniks. There were transgressors in Israel who had patrons among the Egyptians, lived in their midst in affluence and honor, and were therefore unwilling to leave Egypt. The Holy One said, if in the sight of all I bring a plague upon them also, and they die, the Egyptians will say, just as plagues have befallen us, so has a plague befallen them. For this reason, God brought darkness upon the Egyptians so that the Israelites could go into the Egyptian areas, find the dead Israelites who were struck by the plague as they were living in Egyptian areas and homes. The Israelites would go into the Egyptian areas, find the dead Israelites, take them out and bury them so that their enemies could not see what had happened and that the Israelite community would not know that there were disloyal Israelites. That's kind of a wow midrash for me. There were Jews, we would say today, they were Israelites who had assimilated, and they were usually upper class, and they had patrons and support and activities in the Egyptian world, and they had no intention of leaving Egypt. They had it too good. So the plagues, when they came to the Egyptian areas, killed those people too. And God sent the plague of darkness so that other Israelites could sneak into the Egyptian areas, pull out the bodies of dead Israelites so as to conceal this fact. I'm going to open up for a comment or two if you have any comments to make. Anybody? Jim?
This reminds me of World War II in New York City, where the Upper East Side German Jews who had begun their immigration in the 1880s to New York were prosperous and successful and looked down their noses at the shtetl Jews who populated the Lower East Side. This was a group of Jews who opposed entering World War II, in the words of FDR and Stephen S. Wise, because they didn't want to make it a Jewish war, lest the rest of America refuse to participate in it. And there's a whole history about the Lend-Lease Act and how Roosevelt supported Churchill without going into the war and who's responsible for the camps and not knowing. But it's all too present with us that some no-goodniks forget who they are, where they are, and turn a blind eye to injustice when it's all around them and they're even participating in it. And, you know, I'll let people here find their own relevance in various Jewish factions today, but there it is.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you. Any other comments on what you read or feel? Mara, you're nodding your head. Are you nodding your head to Harvey or to me?
No, I was nodding my head in agreement with Jim in terms of the visibility of Jews today on the wrong side of morality in politics.
Okay, Howard?
I want to go into a long spiel, but to me, there's another side to that, which I just want to mention, which is the progressive Jews who are disassociating themselves from Israel and are taking anti-Zionist positions, including many people in democratic politics.
I agree, Howard. You know,
Okay.
that's true.
Yeah. Not only do you agree, Jim, but you'd be pleased to know that you're right. So that was just communicated effectively.
Howard's right too.
Yes.
I mean, extremism is dangerous no matter where it falls. You know, that's the point.
Okay, Brad? Oh, okay, just like this. Okay, please, Fern, hi.
Hi. I think being Jewish is dangerous. No matter what position you take, you can say, I'm going to hide and they find you. You can say, I'm going to be out there and I'm going to support my fellow Jews and they find you. Being Jewish is a difficult thing to be in this world. So, you know, picking the side of whether I should hide my Jewishness, whether it's easy to criticize, and I'm apt to support exactly what, you know, both of you, Jim and Howard, are saying on all sides. Nobody kind of knows what to do about it. We are loathed, and we have been forever and ever.
This comes back to, I think, our biggest social problem, which is that people cannot keep two competing ideas in their head at the same time. They, out of comfort, push themselves to an extreme because it's simpler, rather than engaging conflicting concepts and reconciling them. It's an intellectual and a logical problem that plagues us and has plagued us for years. I think because of poor public education and a media that goes after headlines and ratings and not real information.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is an atypical position. I'm going to go a little bit contrary, and you know, this will shock all of you, but okay. Okay, Merle, you raise your hand and then I'll go contrary.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think along with what everyone has said on this, I think a lot of people are afraid to take a side or make a decision and voice their opinion or decision because of their fear of losing friends, relatives, relationships that are on either side of the fence. And I think that's a big problem. That kind of goes with what Fern was saying. I think that's a big problem right now, is because people are afraid to move forward. They're afraid to voice their opinion because they don't know how people, especially people they thought were important in their lives, are going to react.
So here's my old contrarian position. Any of you remember Hanukkah? Yeah, okay, I got at least 1/3 of the people say, yes, that's good. Now, there were these people called the Hasmoneans and the Maccabees and stuff. And we often portray the Hanukkah story as being the committed Jews rising up against the Hellenizing Jews who adapted to the Greek culture and liked to go to the baths and exercise naked and do the cultural things. All this was abhorrent and to the Hasmoneans, and the Hellenizers became the enemy of the Hasmoneans, and much of what we call the Hanukkah battle internally, not against the Syrian Greeks, but internally, was nothing more than a radical right-wing attack on liberals who were participating in the broader culture of the day. And some of us who actually study the history find the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans great against the Syrians, but pretty rough against liberal Jews, culturally involved, worldly Jews. And now I'm going to go back to the Israelites who didn't want to leave, the Israelites who had become part of Egyptian culture. And I'm trying to put this together, as I will do later in this hour, with the reality that these Israelites were supposedly all slaves, and they were like working in the factories or building storehouses. And I'm trying to figure out how, you talk, Jim, about holding two ideas. I'm trying to figure out, and I really am, how the Israelites could be enslaved, working in the quarries, and that there be some number of Israelites who were sitting and drinking Merlot with their Egyptian buddies on the way to see, okay, what opera would Egyptians go see? Come on.
Aida.
Okay, so they would be going to Aida, sipping Merlot, and being with them. This is a very strange comment made by the rabbis. Where did these assimilating upper class Jews come from if everybody was enslaved? And secondly, they deserve to die? Okay, so that's my contrarian position, and I'm willing to be attacked because, you know, that's the way. I see Steve's electronic hand, and then Natalie and Larry.
But there's a continuum, and I agree with you as to the assimilating. The question really is, how far do you go? You know, do you join the neo-Nazi party to be part of society? Do you, BDS, it's all a matter of, there has to be a line where it's more than assimilation and you actually are an enemy of the Jewish people.
Yes, I certainly am not into the old binary structure of this side or that side. It is a continuum. And I know, Steve, as you know, Fur and others know, that there were Jews in Germany in the middle 1930s who were saying, Ahois Juden, Jews get out. Jews were saying that as part of their identifying with the Nazi world. So yeah, I mean, it is a continuum, and I absolutely agree. Natalie.
Well, I think what we were talking about with the dead bodies and taking them out, to me, that's quite a stretch in an idea, because last year when we did this in this class, what we discussed was that the Israels took all this wealth as a payment for the slavery, and that we also are always surprised when we get further on in the story how they build these temples, and they have all this jewelry, and how they have all these grand things, and we always say, where in the world did they get them from? And it sort of goes back to right here when they took them. So, you know, you can interpret things any way you want, but to me, it was more of a stretch in the wrong way about the dead bodies.
Thank you. By the way, it's very scary when people remember what was said last year. But okay. Thank you. Okay, good. Moving forward, Larry.
So this brought to mind, you know, situations where there are collaborators with invading armies, and you know, you see examples of that throughout history. And Tamara sort of stole a little bit of my thunder there. I was going to, you know, ask exactly the question she posed, which is, what sort of society were the people who wrote the Midrash living in, that they focused on the collaborators who were doing such evil that they deserved death?
And yes, and actually Tamara's comment was something I was also going to say earlier, so we're all in the same boat. There's such a line between collaboration and taking advantage of the culture and the community and so forth. When the ghetto walls began to come down in the 19th century, there were three major responses among the Jewish community. One was absolute fear that if the ghetto walls are down, Judaism will disappear. And people move to the extreme right, if you will, ultra-conservative, locking themselves in a portable ghetto, because in that portable ghetto, they felt they could defend Judaism. And there was a second group that said, hooray, the ghetto walls are down, and now we are going to enter full bore into German, Italian, French, Christian culture. And there were some in the middle who said, the ghetto walls are down. This is an opportunity to pluck the best of the outer world and retain some of what we need to keep ourselves going. And I will tell you, that is it's like walking a tightrope. Tamara can do a much better job than I, but I can tell you that for me, the family of Moses Mendelssohn is, okay, Tamar, is a great example that here you have a world-class philosopher attempting to bring Judaism into the modern world. And within 2 generations, almost all of his brilliant family, and I really mean brilliant family, the grandchildren, awesome, brilliant, creative people, were Christian. How do you walk that line? And if I could try to respond, what was going on in the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries that made the rabbis so anxious about Jews who became part of the broader world, it is precisely because at that time there no longer was a temple, there no longer was a Jewish state, Second Temple gone. Jews were scattered all across the world. And they had no centering force, and the rabbis built a portable community with their teachings and with the laws and so forth. That's what was going on. Fern, please.
I think without getting into philosophy, if you look at the studies now, the fact is that the more we assimilate, the fewer Jews we have. I mean, that's the truth, whether we like that or not, and whether we would like to be able to easily assimilate. If you look at the Pew study, religious study, and so on, most the younger generations are fewer and fewer and fewer Jews. They're intermarrying. And I would wager in many of the families of those of us here, that's what we see. And it's a very rare family. And there are some obviously, who succeed in that, but it is diluted. So what happened with the Mendelssohn, family is happening all over the world.
And it's the tightrope, which I think, Mara, I'm going to be with you in a second. Thank you, Mara. I got that. Oh, there you are up there. I still have to be able to see, and somehow I'm going to have to get a seeing eye cat who can see even the yellow hands. But within the non-Orthodox community, marriages between Jews and non-Jews, the percentage is something close to 70. And one of the great challenges of Reform Judaism, one of the real things we have to do as a job is figure out how to strengthen contacts with Jews who have really gone out into the broad world. And they need to know and feel that they have a home in Judaism. I have mentioned this before. It is astonishing to me that there are some major congregations in the country who now have on staff a rabbi designated to work with conversion classes, post-conversion absorption, and ongoing work with mixed married families as a focused responsibility, like there would be a responsibility. There's a youth rabbi and camp rabbi. There's a rabbi who does religious school. There's a rabbi who works trying to weave a connection with the families that you mentioned. I think this is critically important because we live in a world which is open. It is critically important. Ray, I said 70% of marriages of Jews coming out of the non-Orthodox world are with non-Jews. Did that make sense? Did I say it right? I think it makes sense.
That makes sense now. Yeah, and that is, I think, how I understood it before, but it was such a large number. I didn't want a mistaken idea of what I thought I was hearing. Thank you for clarifying.
No, it's okay, but I also throw misinformation out there just to keep you alert. Please, Larry.
I guess I just am not certain with a statistic like that, how many of those marriages between Jews and non-Jews wind up raising Jewish as opposed to non-Jewish as opposed to non-religious children. I realize my sample size is definitely skewed in that respect, but I know plenty of mixed marriages raising Jewish children.
Yes, and so do I. And the number of mixed married families in which they are successfully raising Jewish children is increasing at a very healthy clip. The number of Jews in the United States is increasing at a healthy clip. There are approximately 7 million now, and there were 5.5, 15, 20 years ago. So, but it was a lot easier to make this happen, Larry, when in my family, in my age family, when a first cousin of mine married a Hungarian Jew, that was a mixed marriage. Really? No, seriously, that was a mixed marriage. My God, we should sit Shiva a hunky. He married a hunky. Okay, that was a better time for this. The percentage, Jim, regarding ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox, the big gauge is compare children in the Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox world with children in the non-Orthodox Jewish world. And there are more children, Jewish children, in the Orthodox, non-Orthodox world than there are Jewish children in the non-Orthodox, unaffiliated liberal. And in terms of who's getting a Jewish education, the percentage of kids getting a Jewish education in the Orthodox world, much higher. We've got a job to do, and Schreien Gewalt isn't going to do it. It's interesting how we've gotten to this from the passage, but this is not an Oi Gewalt. This is an opportunity, but we have to be ready to take that opportunity. Okay, Tamara, wait a second. I had Mara first, then Tamara, and I'm still trying to follow yellow hands. Yes.
So coincidentally, I was reading Rabbi Heschel this morning, who happened to talk about Mendelssohn. And his comment was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Mendelssohn argued that in essence you could have halacha without agadah, that if you perform deeds, that the Torah tells us to perform deeds. It doesn't tell us necessarily to perform deeds with our heart. And so it seems to me that going into the world and trying to live in another culture is not the problem. The problem is our failure to teach Jews to develop Jewish hearts, and that instead we concentrate too much on good deeds.
Boy, that only opened another 6 hours worth of a course. Thank you. Excellent. Tamara?
I was just going to mention, I heard this week, excuse me, a talk by a sociologist of recent study. And one of the problems is even defining what it means to be Jewish, because so many people now define themselves as I'm Jewish, but not religious. I'm religious, I'm Jewish and Christian, or I'm Jewish and Buddhist. And I'm Jewish spiritually, but not in action, the heart rather than the deed. So just to define what do we mean by the word Jew and who has the authority to decide is itself no longer a clear situation.
Okay, I'm going to move on from this because, in fact, this is so important and so big. You know, the temptation is to stay with it and not go back to text, and then Effie would attack me. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. There were, according to the rabbis, Israelites in Egypt who found comfort in the Egyptian culture. There is no text basis for this, as far as I'm aware. This is a creation of the mind of the rabbis living in the 3rd, 4th, 5th century CE. who were writing about problems in their day and retrojecting the problems back into the period of the Exodus. But what we're finding out is that the problem that the rabbis faced in their days in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century is exacerbated and huge in the problems that we face today. One, for me, this is why I'm a liberal Jew committed to Reform Judaism. This is our problem. The ultra-Orthodox and the Orthodox are not going to solve this problem for us. We have to develop an approach which is welcoming, understanding, and yet have better than amorphous boundaries. If all we have are amorphous boundaries, we can't survive. And I don't know how to do this. I just know that it's a huge and important task. Okay, I'm reading all of the notes and they're good. And they're good. And I'm just going to choose to go on because there's so much. Brad?
Yeah, I just want to go to change topics a bit, to go back to the first midrash that you talked about lending versus stealing the goods of the Egyptians. And I wonder if there's something in this story that there's some indication possibly in this story the Jews, the Israelites would end up back in Egypt at some point. I mean, we certainly know when they're in the desert, they talk about returning to Egypt. So is there some, are there indications that this exodus was not meant to be a permanent exodus, but that there would be a return?
Interesting. At a certain point in the conversations with Pharaoh, Moses asked for permission to let the people go out 3 days into the, go out there, and with the indication that they would then come back. So this was there. But I'm gonna shift a little bit the ground of the conversation and go to science. And I know that kills all the fun, but when I read the passage about the Israelites borrowing, quotation marks, that's for Seder with the kids, borrowing from the Egyptians or plundering the Egyptians, I am inclined to believe that whole story was inserted by later scribes so that they can explain how the Israelites could have a golden calf and have a this and a that in the tabernacle in the desert. There had to be a way. Where did slaves building store cities for Pharaoh come about accumulating all this gold and all this wealth? They needed an explanation. They needed a story. And the story of the golden calf and the story of the tabernacle could not possibly have occurred in the wilderness. They're written into the wilderness to explain situations which existed much later. And in order for all of this to work, the Israelites had to possess great wealth. Was it cryptocurrency? No. It probably was, whoa, they took it from Egypt and it was like reparations and it was just, and the story gets woven. So was it actually plundering? Was it borrowing? Was it temporary? all those are ways of trying to explain, and forgive me on this, and to drop this on you near the end of the hour. That's a great trick rabbis have. Oh, sorry, we're out of time. Can't answer your question. The story of taking money from the Egyptians was necessary to explain a later need to retroject a tabernacle and a golden calf into the desert. I've made the point, and I'm certainly open to, the good thing about teaching a class on Zoom, you cannot physically assault me. Yes, Steve.
Tamar has a hand up.
Okay, I saw.
Where did they get the riches even later to build the temple?
You're saying King Solomon, how did he do it?
Yeah.
Well, he was a very wealthy guy. Read the Bible.
But they were wealthy in terms of livestock and all these other things. Where did they get all of the
well, the livestock wealth? By the way, this is a large story. Moses says to Pharaoh, and I trust Moses, he's a good guy. Moses says to Pharaoh, oh no, we're not going to go out empty-handed. We are taking all of our sheep and our cattle and everything with us to go into the desert. And Pharaoh's saying, no, you can't. And because if you leave your animals here, then you'll come back to get them. And I know you'll come back. Wait a second, said I to me. Where the heck did Israelites get vast wealth in cattle and sheep? It's the same question. They were out building these structures for Pharaoh. Do you see, Steve, in this incredible inconsistencies if you are trying to get a straight narrative flow from there arose in Egypt a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph, to the slavery and to the expulsion. And then if you rely upon Hollywood, these poor huddled masses crawling out of Egypt at the same time had great wealth, gold, cattle, and sheep. For me, this is, what do they say in playing poker? A tell? Something that gives you away. This is a tell. Tamara.
I wanted to respond to Brad's question. I agree with you about why the story is here. But yes, Egypt does remain a very tempting place throughout the history of Israel afterwards. So when the Babylonians come, or when an Israelite king misbehaves, Egypt is where Judeans run to escape. So the temptation to go to Egypt as a haven is part of the story for a long, long time.
And of course, possibly to see this in contemporary terms, when we look at the number of Jews that returned to Germany after the war, after the Holocaust, it's likewise surprising.
And I am facing for the very first time in the 5 years we've been together an array of comments in the chat box which really deserve response. I mean, Ray's comment, I can even actually see most of the words. They're great stuff. And Steve, Judaism not a race. How do we, oh boy. Thanks, Fern. I was trying to absorb all the other stuff and this comes up. What we really need is a retreat to be able to hang out together for a day and just let this stuff happen. You are brilliant people. You are raising totally wonderful questions. Let me tell you, I think I'll only speak to Cindy again. I won't talk to anybody else. And then I sent out a letter this past week to my grandchildren. And it's one of those, oh, knock, knock, who's there? Saba, uh-oh, what's the problem? And I invited the 8 of them to study Sugiot, matters of Talmud, with me once every 2 weeks. Why do I have time to do that? It's because I'm desperately afraid of the same thing that every single one of you has mentioned. I want them to know, and the more they know, the more connected they will be. I think that if we allow our kids to have a decent Jewish education that continues into high school and college and beyond, we have a better shot at retaining them, which is what we all want to do. This is why, folks, I am a passionate advocate of day school. With all the problems appertaining thereunto, I'm a passionate advocate of day school. The stronger the Jewish background, no guarantee. I want my grandchildren, the kids who are responding so far 3 out of 8 have said yes. The ones who are responding are all in college. And I'm going to have a chance to chat Talmud with them once every 2 weeks for an hour. This is what we all have to find a way of making available for our families. You're not comfortable teaching Talmud. There are people out there who are. There can be ways of doing it. Is it too late for me, Rabbi? I'm too old. It's for them. No, we must never, never, never say it's too late for me. I look around at the screen. God, I'm delivering a blasted sermon and I'm sorry. I look around at the screen. Every one of you is involved in growing Jewish knowledge for yourselves. We have to fight to make our approach broadly available and attractive and important, and talk about ways to spend our time. I walk every day with my healthcare person, and I pass so many people pushing carriages, and the person pushing the carriage is on the cell phone. Okay? And I want to scream. Really? Really? Oh, God, am I getting bad? Tamara said that I've copied and downloaded the entire chat. If you wanted to get a copy of the chat, write me. Tamara, I would like a copy of the chat. I will write you, I promise. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end. This couldn't be. I have a really good lesson. We have to do Yahrzeit Kaddish now. What a day. Oh my. Success. You destroyed my lesson plan. Success. We had a really important conversation. And thank you for that. I mentioned now those who have passed away during the past month: Ken Klenner, Wendy Kramer, Joyce Austin, Arnold Sedell, Ruth Green Stamler, Sheila Bordeaux Wine. Yahrzeits that have occurred during the past week: Olga Ackerman, Jeanette Agay, Harold Aiden, Toby Alex, Janine Nina Barish, Paul Baum, Selma Becker, David Bedry, Pauline Berkowitz, Samuel Berman, Alan Burns, Burton J. Burson, Samuel Binder, Sherman Brody, Louis Brown, Patricia N. Brooks, Suzanne Chartrand, Eve Sherbin, Ilse Klaus, Stanley Corwin, Minnie Crystal, Andrea Eimer, Rosalie Jean Epstein, Jean Fagadev, Julius Fish, Craig Fisher, Florence Fisher. Certainly we remember Rabbi Alan Frayling, Lee Bud Friedman, Florence Gam, Goldie Gelfand, Dorothy Gerber, Adeline Goldstein, Joan Goldsmith, Milton Gray, Adele Habibi, Jerry Hausband, Selma Hanover, Janice Harwood, Albert Harris, Fred Handler, Chung Ju Hin, Stanley Hockman, Sid Horn, Claire Horowitz, Lloyd Isaac, Solomon Israel, Rosalie Coleman, David Kamens, Leonard Kanofsky, Karen Capson, Clotilda Karamazin, Yehuda Katan, Aleph Katz, Helen Keene, Hilda Keith, Calvin Kleiman, Arthur Knopp, Louise Kapolsky, Better Cooperstock, Commander George Kurtz, Roy Landstrom, Bernard Lax, Saryana Kokatov Lebedev, Eugene Lederer, Samuel Lehman, Shirley Levitt, William Lockheim, Murray Joseph Lebliner, David Lyons, Steve Marcus, Frank Markowitz, Madeline Auer Maslin, Becky Miner, Saul Miner, Michael Miller, Morris Mendel, Joanne Minkin-Levy, Clarice Morazzo, Evelyn Motzkin, Sam Margalan, Sarah Nankin, Alia Normand, Pearl Polachek, Helen Raymond, Hermo Ruggiero, I'm sorry, Hermo Ruggiero, Sanford Reisenbach, Judith Robbins, Molly Robbins, Kay Joyce Rodstein, Alex Rosenberg, Ann Rosenblatt, Lisa Ann Rose, Ronald Roth, Esther Russo, Samantha Sachs, Roberta Samsky, Bluma Samuels, Jack Sandow, Beth Lauren Shapira, I.J. Schiff, John Schoen, Louis Shadlin, Brent Carter Schamberg, Arlene Shapiro, Herbert Shapiro, Gladys Siegel, Harold Silverstein, Robert Simon, Ruth Seneko, Alan Sobin, Abraham Solomon, Irma Sperrer, Robert Stein, Mildred Stern, Julia Taylor, Susan Abrams, Tiano, Sanford Tischerman, Arnold Trainin, Jane Trainin, Betty Amansky, Sylvia Unger, Catherine Wallen, Elaine Warsaw, Emmanuel Weber, Lorraine Wigger, Irene Weil, Ron Wire, Warren David Weissman, Michael Weiss, Julia Weisstein, Elaine Westheimer, Aubrey Woodson, Mark Williams, Yakov Yanklevich, Barbara Schreier Zola. Again, I apologize for the names that I mispronounced and for names that might have been omitted from the list. If you have other names to be mentioned at this time, please speak them aloud.
Debbie Fountain.
We mention all of those who have no one to say Kaddish for them, all of those who died in senseless acts of violence. We bear all of them in mind as we say Kaddish. Yitkadal,
No.
Yitkadal, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Ivra Chirute, V'amlich Malchute, V'chayechon V'yomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala U'vizman Karev, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah, Min Shemaya. Chaim Aleinu Bial Kol Yisrael V'imru
Amen.
Amen. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitma'ar v'yitramam v'yitmaseh v'yitadar v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha le'elam min kol berachata v'shivata tushbachata v'nechmata da'miran v'alma v'imru amen
Amen.
oseh shalom v'imru mav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu al kol Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
It's a wonderful day today, and I have to apologize for being a bit distracted. Effie, yes, what?
Would it be all right if Tamara sent you the list of the comments and then you send it out to everybody? Instead of everybody sending an email to Tamara?
I hate it when you come up with a good idea, but all right.
I'm not sure it's such a good idea because the people who get it who haven't been here and it may not make sense and it imposes it. I'm not sure. I think I'll let you decide.
Tamara, I finally get a compliment from the rabbi and you kill it?
I'll let the rabbi decide. I'll send it to you. And
No, you know what? You've never let the rabbi decide, Tamara. I know my place.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, then send me the requests. Okay, send me the request.
Good idea.
Okay, so we'll take the brilliant idea offered by Effie and we'll blend it with the correction offered by Tamara. And I am your faithful servant. And again, I'm sorry for being distracted today, and I know that I was. There are names on a yahrzeit list that can do that. When you hit a name. Okay, love you. I gotta
Thank
grab
you. Shabbat
Bye.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm just closing.
See you tomorrow, Barbara. Hi, Steve. Haven't talked to you in a while. You're muted, Steve. You're muted, Steve.